All right, so hopefully you enjoyed seeing the chimpanzee helping the human who had dropped the pen or whatever the object was. And then similarly, the baby who helped the adult who had dropped something, right? The idea that these behaviors would emerge so early in a human or in an animal that's, related to us, but very distantly, it gives you the impression that, along the evolutionary line that includes primates and babies, obviously, that includes these people and chimpanzees, that it benefited the species, right? Like it got their genes in the future more often if they were helpful. And so that behavior was preserved. So that's the evolutionary interpretation of why we're helpful, right? What we see in adult humans is that adults are more helpful towards younger people who need help, towards healthier people who need help, and then towards close kin. And so evolutionary theorists say, well, we help the younger and the healthier because they represent a benefit to the species because they'll probably get their genes into the future. And then we help close kin because they share our genes. And so we want them to get their genes into the future because that'll get us into the future. And so evolutionary theorists always are going to look through that lens of, does it get our genes into the future? And so we have like that macro, younger, healthier people probably will help the species by getting their genes in the future. And close kin will help us individually because they'll get our genes into the future. The I'm having a vocabulary problem because the conundrum is the word that I'm trying to think of, is how on the one hand you're endangering your own life, but on the other hand this is somehow boosting reproductive fitness. So it's a little bit incompatible to think about it like that, except for that evolutionary psychology takes the perspective that even if you as an individual get removed from the gene pool, if your close kin are still there, they can get your genes into the future through them. And like I said, younger, healthier members of the species will get more genes into the future. And so that represents a benefit to, each individual. That's the idea. So yeah, it seems incompatible, incongruous. I think that's the word I was looking for earlier. Incongruous, that you would endanger your own life in order to boost your reproductive fitness. But, you got to kind of hop back and forth between an individual wanting to get their own personal genes into the future by themselves making babies versus the larger issue of wanting the species to be carried on and, that your genes are independent of you in a lot of ways, right? You have siblings or you have cousins or you have other people who carry some of your genes and their reproduction gets your genes into the future. So this is called kin selection in evolutionary theory, the idea that, okay, so maybe I'm selected out, but my kin go on. Animals help genetic kin more than they help unrelated members of their own species. I've been watching a show called Meerkat Manor. I might have mentioned this previously. And they have these families of meerkats who just think each other are the worst invaders ever, and they'll attack and they don't like each other, but they'll always groom the members of their family. And the thing that ties them together is that they all descended from the same matriarch in their group. And so we're all related, so we all try and take care of each other, and we just hate these other meerkats, but we love the ones that share our genes. And you see that across lots of different animals. Mothers tend to help their children more than fathers do. And a lot of times as you have children coming of age, it's the dads who really want the kids to spread their wings and it's time for them to move out. And the moms who are like, I don't know, they're not ready. I don't know, right? Moms oftentimes are much more helpful of their offspring for a longer period of time than dads are. And one explanation from evolutionary psychology is that, mothers know for a fact that these offspring carry her genes, whereas fathers are pretty sure these offspring carry their genes, but they don't have that surety that moms have. And so moms have like a greater investment in knowing these are my kin and I want these kin to make it into adulthood and ultimately, reproduce and stuff like that. These ideas are very controversial, of course. I mean, I'm reporting what evolutionary psychologists say. Not everybody agrees with this. Obviously, there are lots of different interpretations on why people help, obviously. So let's talk a little bit about helping because of sociocultural norms. It almost seems like those are the polar opposites of each other, right? To say you're behaving this way because the species has selected for it, and so you sort of, this is your predisposition, versus sociocultural explanations, which is because you've been socialized or you've been encouraged or you've seen models, these kinds of things. So sociocultural norms tend to carry, messages about social responsibility, right? That, people have helped you to get where you are, and then it's your responsibility to help the people behind you, like that we all have a responsibility to each other, and that we're supposed to help the other members of our society. There's the reciprocity that we talked about in the last chapter, right? This idea that, if somebody does something for me, I feel responsible for reciprocating that act. So here we have Santa Claus begging because he's like, I give and give and give. And what about something for me, right? Reciprocity. If I do a favor for you, I should be able to expect in the future that if I'm in need, you would help me, right? And that's a sociocultural norm. And it's worldwide. Like every culture has that norm that you return favors. Every culture has that norm. Every culture that's been studied. So here we have the results of a study where subjects had been given a cola by a Confederate. So we see on the y-axis the mean number of raffle tickets bought by the subject. We have one condition on the left on the x-axis where the Confederate gave them a cola. In the middle condition, the experimenter gave the subject a cola. And in the final condition, there was no drink. It was the Confederate who was selling the tickets. So in the condition where the Confederate gave the subject a drink, the subject was much more likely to reciprocate and buy raffle tickets from the Confederate. When the experimenter gave the subject a drink, it didn't have any effect on the subject's likelihood of buying a raffle ticket from the Confederate. In fact, if you see the no drink, same basic rate of raffle ticket purchases. So only when the Confederate gave the subject a cola did then the subject actually boost their rate of purchase from the Confederate. So it looks very clearly like there was some reciprocity norm in play where, well, you gave me a cola, I guess I should buy a raffle ticket from you. Social justice, right? The cultural norm that, things should be set up in a fair and equitable way, right? That everybody has the same chances, that, we need to sometimes help people who have historically not been helped in order to provide some parity, right? To bring things up to level. And so that's a sociocultural norm. So we've got our evolutionary theory on one end. We've got the social cultural theory sort of on the other end of the continuum. In between those, and probably a little closer to sociocultural, is the idea that we have learned to be helpful from our experiences in the environment. One way that we learn to be helpful is through modeling, by watching other people be helpful. So here's you're going to think I'm an insurance salesman by the time I get done showing you insurance commercials, but I think you'll enjoy reminiscing over this Liberty Mutual Pay It Forward commercial. And their intent here is that people will follow the modeling that's provided in this commercial. So go ahead and enjoy that, and I will see you on the other side.